I guess we must start, obviously, RuPaul's Drag Race. Why did you enter RuPaul's Drag Race UK?
As someone that's not particularly very traditionally the Drag Race brand, it was coming here, and as much as I can say, it's the biggest, platform of its kind, which is entirely true. It's also a case of thinking about it with where the franchise has gone in general. You kind of gotta, by the time season 300 comes out, you've either been on it or you haven't. So it's like, well, it's a huge platform, so I'm gonna go for it. And I got it on my second try. I tried for season 1 as well.
What has the fallout, might be the wrong word, what's the sort of reception been since you left? How's your career, has it been blossoming since then?
Well, I mean, we've all still been stuck at home, haven't we? But the level of eyes now on me is something else. It's like, as much as people can prepare you and go, your public profile increased, you go, yeah, of course it does. And you see it a particular way. But the reality of it is bigger than I thought it would be. Particularly episode 1 with David Bowie Gate, that was kind of international outcry of how didn't Michelle see Bowie. So that was quite helpful, because there's nothing quite like the power of people feeling wronged. So that's quite nice. And I'm very glad I managed to remain composed the entire time as well. Because even if something is wrong, if you say it's wrong, then it's not wrong anymore. You know what I mean? So I was like, well, if I had gone, yeah, bloody Michelle didn't see Bowie, and then people go, oh, no, maybe I don't see Bowie either. So yeah, I took it in good stride, and good things came from having a nice attitude about the whole thing. When
did you start getting into music, particularly? So I know you're a multi-instrumentalist. When did that start?
So I decided I wanted to do shows when I was like 17. So I done like piano lessons and school plays and all of the, that kind of performative education based stuff. About 17 years old, I think I found the Dresden Dolls when I was 15 or 16. Because I forget how old the Dresden Dolls are, because in my head they're still really, really new, but they're really not. So I discovered them when I was like 15, 16. And I was in kind of very gothy, heavy metal-y kind of groups of friends. So all of my kind of music taste around that was, I love musical theatre and stuff like that, but I also really like very alternative stuff. And the Dresden Dolls combined that kind of cabaret musical aesthetic with essentially, punk. They're a punk band, despite it being piano and drums, which isn't what you typically go, oh, that's a punk band. Now, things like Ginny Lemon is very punk, I think, for instance. It's not all, not mohawks and electric guitars. It can be Amanda Palmer on piano and Brian on the drums.
It's attitude, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was hearing that kind of angsty, alternative, angry music, but done with a piano. Just, I don't know, it did something, and I was like, right, I'm gonna do this. And when I was about 17, started, doing live shows, and I entered like a battle of the bands, and then because I was doing kind of cabaret style stuff in live music nights, then a burlesque promoter locally asked me to do their burlesque show because it was a good fit. So I was doing, despite being very cabaret, I was never in any cabaret shows because I didn't have any kind of foot in the door for that one. And also at 17 years old, it's still highly illegal. I mean, I hosted my first burlesque show at 17 years old, and they all thought I was 19 because I lied. I've been lying the whole time, and I couldn't keep up with where my lies were and how old I technically was now. So there was no foot in the door for cabaret, and by the time I was like 18, 19, I was like fully immersed in actual cabaret shows, adult nightlife entertainment.
How did that, for you, transition into doing drag then?
I mean, drag is merely the vessel that it is. Ultimately, drag I don't think is the genre, because so many things can be drag, but not but be something else entirely. You know, you've got musicians that do drag, you know, storytellers, poets, lip syncers, dancers, actors, all of that, and they sort of drag as the vessel in which they appear, but they do other things. So ultimately, I'm a cabaret performer. I'm a very like traditional format cabaret performer that just so happens to be in that particular shell.
How has drag cabaret changed since you from when you first started out?
I mean, when I started out, it was the main kind of revival of the burlesque scene. So it was very much like what I was doing was one of not many people in burlesque shows. It was like it was all, you know, burlesque dancers and burlesque performers, and then the odd kind of musical act or speaking based one. So that's actually how I ended up hosting a lot of them, was because there weren't many people that spoke. It would normally be like, oh, they'll take turns. One of the two people that runs it that would normally do an act would then host that month, sort of thing. But then, so it was all burlesque when I was doing it initially, and now it's become kind of more variety based. So all of like the big kind of dinner shows and stuff, there might some of them are heavier burlesque than others, but it's more variety. So yeah, in the circles that I haunted, I think it was mostly burlesque, and now it's a lot more variety. And now drag has actually been introduced to that world as well. Like over the past couple of years, you'll see more drag in those kind of shows when you weren't seeing drag before. In them, you know, there might be a drag host, but that would be it. Or very rarely you'd get a drag act doing it because it wasn't considered, I don't want to say appropriate, but it wasn't considered in theme. Do you know what I mean? The kind of drag that was happening at that time, we're talking like, you know, Johnny Woo, you know, Glory type. I mean, not that the Glory was open at the time, but like the kind of more radical East London-y stuff was happening. It was either that or the traditional pub stuff. So it was, you know, it was either someone rolling around in baked beans, or it was someone singing "I Am What I Am" in a strappy sequin dress. Like there wasn't much in terms of like between that. From my experience, anyway, visually myself, I've always looked more cabaret, and then it was stranger for me to go into drag because then I really stand out as looking different in drag. Whereas in cabaret shows, I look like a cabaret person. Whereas in drag shows, it's like, oh, isn't this different?